Have you ever felt like you were meant for something more? Like there was a purpose waiting for you, just beyond the edge of your ordinary life? My name is Stella Grace Wilson, and for 24 years, I believed I knew exactly who I was: a dedicated nurse, a New Yorker, a woman still healing from losing my mother too young. But in just 7 days, a dying billionaire's last wish would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself, my past, and what truly matters in this life. This isn't just a story about inheritance or unexpected wealth. This is a story about how the most profound connections often come when we least expect them, and how sometimes the person we're trying to save ends up saving us in return. If you believe that everyone has a story worth hearing, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Tell me your city in the comments below. Let's begin. Manhattan General Hospital wasn't just a medical facility. It was a monument to money and power, a gleaming glass fortress where the city's elite came when their meticulously curated lives finally buckled under the weight of time or excess. I'd worked there for 3 years since graduating from NYU's nursing program, long enough to understand the unspoken hierarchy. The VIP wing, where I was assigned, felt more like a 5-star hotel than a hospital. Private suites with panoramic views of Central Park, gourmet meal service, and a hushed, reverent atmosphere that seemed to whisper, "Important people sleep here." I was checking vitals in room 814 when the emergency alert flashed across my pager. Code blue, VIP Suite 901. The name beside the room number made my stomach tighten. Arthur Pendleton. Everyone in New York knew that name. The Pendleton family had shaped the city's skyline for generations. Shipping magnates turned real estate titans, their name etched in bronze on museums, university buildings, and hospital wings, including this one. When I entered Suite 901, the air crackled with tension. 3 doctors worked with the controlled urgency that only comes when the patient is someone who could buy the hospital if he wanted to. Arthur Pendleton lay amidst the starched white sheets, looking surprisingly small for a man of such immense stature. At 85, his face was a roadmap of his life. Sharp, intelligent eyes now clouded with pain, a strong jawline softened by age, hands that had built empires now trembling slightly as they gripped the sheets. Cardiac event followed by respiratory distress, Dr. Evans murmured to me as I joined the team. His age isn't doing him any favors. For the next 2 hours, we worked to stabilize him. When the crisis passed and the doctors retreated to consult, I remained. It was against protocol for a nurse to stay with a VIP patient without specific orders, but something about the old man lying so still and alone in that massive suite kept me rooted to the spot. The rain started around midnight, sheeting against the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed a glittering, indifferent Manhattan. I pulled a chair close to his bed, monitoring his vitals, adjusting his oxygen, occasionally dabbing a cool cloth to his forehead. His breathing was shallow but steady. My charge nurse, Linda, found me there at 2 a.m. "Wilson? I thought you were off hours ago." She glanced from me to the sleeping billionaire and back, her expression unreadable. Most nurses get nervous around these types. The Pendletons, they're different. "I just see a man who's scared," I replied softly, not taking my eyes off my patient. Linda studied me for a long moment. "You're a good nurse, Stella. Sometimes too good for your own damn good." She squeezed my shoulder. "I'll cover for you. Don't stay all night." But I did stay. As the city slept and the rain softened to a gentle patter, I watched over Arthur Pendleton. I thought about my mother, who died bringing me into the world, a sacrifice that had shaped my entire life's purpose. I thought about the empty apartment in Queens that waited for me, filled with nursing textbooks and the quiet loneliness that follows you when you're young and ambitious in a city that never sleeps. Just before dawn, as the first gray light began to bleed across the eastern sky, his eyes fluttered open. They were the clearest, sharpest blue I'd ever seen, the color of a winter sky over the Hudson. They fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Water," he rasped. I helped him sip from the straw, supporting his head with my hand. His skin was papery and cool against my fingers. When he'd drunk his fill, his gaze never left my face. "You stayed," he whispered. I'm your nurse, I said simply. He shook his head weakly.
No.
They leave. The others always leave. His hand trembled as he pointed toward the door. Don't let them in.
Who?
I asked, leaning closer. Anyone. My sons. They're lawyers. The vultures. His voice gained strength, edged with something that sounded like fear. They've been waiting for this. I can feel them circling. I started to reassure him, to tell him he was safe in the hospital, but he grasped my wrist with surprising strength. You stayed, he repeated, his eyes searching mine. You didn't know who I was, but you stayed. I want you to be my nurse. Only you. The Pendleton family arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, a procession of tailored suits, polished shoes, and practice concern. Michael Pendleton, the eldest son, led the charge. At 55, he was a slightly faded copy of his father. The same sharp blue eyes, the same strong jaw, but where Arthur's presence felt substantial, Michael's felt performative. I need to see my father, he announced to the nursing station, not asking but telling. Linda gestured to me. Mr. Pendleton has requested that Stella be his primary nurse. He's not taking visitors this morning. Michael's eyes narrowed as he looked me over. You're his nurse? The question was an accusation. Before I could respond, Arthur's voice, weak but clear, came from the intercom by his door. If it's not Nurse Wilson, the door stays closed. The change in Michael was immediate, a flash of anger so quickly masked I might have imagined it. Father, it's Michael. We need to discuss the quarterly. Not now. Arthur cut him off.
I'm resting.
One of the younger sons, James, I thought, stepped forward. Dad, we're worried about you. Then let me rest, Arthur said, and the intercom clicked off. Michael turned his attention back to me, his smile not reaching his eyes. My father isn't himself. The medication, the stress. We'll be back this afternoon. As they retreated down the hall, Linda let out a low whistle. Well, you've made an impression. On both of them. Over the next week, a strange rhythm developed. During the day, I became Arthur Pendleton's gatekeeper, fielding calls from business associates, politely turning away family members, and managing his care with meticulous attention. At night, when the hospital grew quiet, we talked. He didn't want to discuss business or wealth or power. He asked about me, where I'd grown up, why I'd become a nurse, what I dreamed about. I found myself telling him things I rarely shared with anyone about my mother dying in childbirth, about growing up with a single father who worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, about the burning need to prevent other families from experiencing that kind of loss. You're different, he said one evening, watching me adjust his fore. They all see the money first. The power. You see the man. I see a patient who needs care. I corrected gently. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. Exactly. On the 7th day, as the sunset painted his room in shades of orange and gold, he looked at me with an intensity that made the air still. Stella, do you believe in redemption? The question caught me off guard. I finished recording his vitals before answering. I believe everyone deserves a second chance. His eyes grew distant, fixed on some point beyond the window. I made a choice once. The worst kind of choice. The kind that looks right to everyone else but feels wrong in your soul. What kind of choice? I asked softly. He was silent for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, I let the love of my life go. I chose the family business over her. My parents said she wasn't suitable. That she came from the wrong background, the wrong everything. The bitterness in his voice was a living thing. Her name was Eleanor, he whispered. She was pregnant when I left her. The confession hung between us, raw and painful. This story is about to take an incredible turn. If you've ever felt like you were meant for something more, like you're waiting for a sign, then please take a second to hit the subscribe button. It helps these stories reach people who need to hear them most. Your support means everything. The door swung open without warning, cutting through the intimate moment. Michael stood framed in the doorway, a leather-bound portfolio in one hand, his expression tight with impatience. Father, we need to talk about the merger. The board is getting anxious and... Not now, Michael. Arthur's voice was weary but firm. This can't wait. Michael's composure cracked. We're talking about a $12 billion deal. You can't just check out because you're feeling unwell. Arthur's eyes flashed with something that looked remarkably like contempt. I said not now. Michael's gaze swung to me. Leave us. Before I could move, Arthur raised a trembling hand. If she goes, you go. The standoff stretched for 5 heartbeats before Michael turned on his heel and stormed out, the door swinging shut behind him with a soft click. In the silence that followed, Arthur seemed to shrink into the pillows. They've been like this since they were boys, he murmured. Always grasping. Never understanding what really matters. He looked at me, his eyes clear and focused. I need you to find her. Find who? I asked, though I already knew. Eleanor. Or our child. His voice cracked on the last word. I spent decades searching, sending private investigators, offering rewards. But Eleanor, she was smarter than all of them. She didn't want my money. She just wanted to protect our child from this. He gestured weakly at the opulent room. He instructed me to retrieve a small safety deposit box key from his personal effects. The documents inside will lead you to her, to where she was last living. Mr. Pendleton, I'm a nurse, I protested. Shouldn't you send a lawyer? A private investigator? No, he said, his voice gaining strength. They'll just offer money. I need someone who understands what really matters. Someone with heart. His eyes met mine, pleading. Please, Stella. This is my last wish. That night, I stood frozen in my apartment, the key cold and heavy in my palm. The weight of his secret felt overwhelming. I was holding the key to a past buried beneath decades of regret, a past that, for some reason I couldn't explain, felt strangely familiar. The next morning I called in sick, something I never did, and took the train north. As Manhattan receded behind me, the landscape transformed from urban sprawl to the rolling hills and quiet towns of the Hudson Valley. Crestwood, when I finally arrived, was exactly as he described, a postcard-perfect New England village where time seemed to move slower. The local librarian directed me to Maple Lane, a quiet street lined with century-old oak trees. The cottage sat at the very end, partially hidden by overgrown rose bushes. Its white paint was peeling, and the garden had gone wild, but there was a quiet dignity to the place that made my throat tighten. The key turned smoothly in the lock, as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, time had stood still. The air smelled of dried lavender, old wood, and something else, something sweet and familiar that I couldn't quite place. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows, illuminating dancing motes of dust. On the mantelpiece sat a silver-framed photograph of a young woman with kind eyes and a warm, generous smile. Eleanor. And beside it, another photograph of a baby girl with a tuft of dark hair and eyes the same clear blue as Arthur Pendleton's. My hands trembled as I opened the small wooden box on the coffee table. Inside were letters, tied with a faded ribbon, and a delicate gold locket engraved with a single name, Grace. I unfolded the first letter, the handwriting elegant and familiar. My dearest Arthur, our daughter is growing so fast. She has your stubborn chin and my love of books. She asks about her father sometimes, and I tell her you were a good man who had to make a difficult choice. I don't need your wealth. I just wish you could see her laugh. I named her Grace, because that's what she's brought to my life. Maybe one day she'll find you, or maybe she'll understand why I had to protect her from that world. Tears streamed down my face as I read another, dated years later. Arthur. Grace became a nurse today. She graduated at the top of her class, just like I always knew she would. She's helping people, healing them, just like I always hoped she would. I told her her father was a good man who got lost. If only I could show her who you were before the family business consumed you. The letters ended there. Grace was alive. She was out there somewhere, living her life, never knowing the truth about her father's regret. My phone buzzed as I hurried back to the city, the letters and locket safely tucked in my bag. It was Linda. Stella, where are you? Mr. Pendleton's condition is deteriorating rapidly. The family is here, and it's getting ugly. I raced back to Manhattan General, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The VIP floor was chaos, lawyers arguing in hushed, intense tones, family members clustered in small groups, their faces tight with tension and something that looked suspiciously like anticipation. I pushed through them to Arthur's room. The change in him was shocking. He was fading fast, an oxygen mask covering his pale face, his breathing shallow and irregular. I rushed to his side, taking his cold hand in mine. "Mr. Pendleton, I found her. I found Eleanor's letters. And I found Grace." A faint smile touched his lips. A single tear traced a path through the wrinkles on his temple. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible through the mask. "Thank you, Stella." His trembling hand found mine and squeezed weakly before going still. The monitor emitted a long, steady tone that seemed to echo through the sudden silence of the room. In the stunned stillness that followed, Michael pushed forward, his face a mask of fury. "What did you do to him? What did you say?" But I stood frozen, holding the hand of the man who'd trusted me with his deepest regret. I wasn't just his nurse anymore. I was the keeper of his redemption, the witness to his final peace. As I prepared to leave hours later, my shift long over, my heart heavy with grief I had no right to feel, I noticed another envelope tucked among the documents from Crestwood. It was addressed in the same shaky handwriting I'd come to recognize. "To my daughter, Grace. If this reaches you, know that not a day passed that I didn't think of you, that I didn't regret the choice that cost me your mother's love and your childhood. Forgive me, your father. We're about to discover the truth that will change everything. If this story is touching your heart, please share it with someone who needs to see that redemption is always possible. And don't forget to subscribe for the astonishing conclusion." The morning sun streamed into Arthur's hospital room as I returned, the envelope clutched in my hand. The bed was empty, stripped bare, the room sterile and impersonal once more. The finality of it hit me like a physical blow. Linda found me standing there, lost in the silence. "He asked for you at the end, you know," she said softly. "Kept saying your name." "Stella Grace," he said, over and over. The name landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through my entire being.
Stella Grace. No one called me that.
Not since. I stumbled back to the nurse's station, my hands trembling as I pulled out the locket from Crestwood.
Grace.
The name engraved on the locket. The daughter Arthur had spent his life searching for. My mother's face swam in my memory, the photograph I kept on my bedside table. Eleanor Wilson. She'd never talked much about my father, only that he was a good man who couldn't be part of our lives. She died when I was 8, and Dad, the man who raised me, had been her high school sweetheart who stepped into care for another man's child. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos until I found it. The picture of my mother, young and vibrant, standing in front of a white cottage with rose bushes. The same cottage in Crestwood. My breath caught in my throat. The pieces began clicking into place with terrifying, beautiful certainty. I rushed to the hospital administrator's office, where Arthur's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, was waiting. "Miss Wilson," he said, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Pendleton left instructions to give you this upon his passing." He handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside were more photographs, my mother, younger than I'd ever seen her, laughing with a man I recognized as a young Arthur Pendleton. Another photo of my mother, visibly pregnant, standing in front of the same cottage. And a birth certificate, my birth certificate, with father's name listed as Arthur James Pendleton. The world tilted on its axis. The air grew thin. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. "Are you all right, Miss Wilson?" Mr. Henderson asked, his voice filled with concern. "I need to see him," I whispered. "One more time." They'd moved Arthur's body to the hospital morgue, awaiting transfer to the funeral home. The attendant led me to the cold, sterile room where he lay covered by a white sheet. I pulled the sheet back from his face. In death, he looked peaceful. All the worry lines smoothed away, the tension gone from his jaw. I studied his features, really studied them for the first time. The shape of his eyes, the curve of his brow, the stubborn set of his chin. They were my eyes, my brow, my chin. Tears I could no longer control streamed down my face as I placed my hand against his cold cheek. "I found her, Dad," I whispered. "I've been here all along." The truth settled over me, warm and heavy as a blanket. All those late-night conversations, the immediate connection I'd felt, the way he looked at me with such strange familiarity. He'd known. Some part of him had recognized me, even if his conscious mind hadn't caught up. I thought of the last thing he'd said to me. "Thank you, Stella." Not just Stella.
Stella Grace. He'd known at the end.
Days later, I was summoned to the law offices of Pendleton Enterprises. The media had gotten wind of the story. Billionaire leaves fortune to mystery nurse. And paparazzi clustered outside the building. The conference room was filled with Pendletons, Michael, his brothers, their wives and children, all watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and began reading Arthur's will. The legal language swam in my head until one sentence cut through the fog. "I leave my entire estate, including all shares of Pendleton Enterprises, all real estate holdings and all financial assets, to my daughter, Stella Grace Wilson Pendleton." The room erupted. Michael shot to his feet. "This is absurd. She manipulated him." DNA tests were conducted per Mr. Pendleton's instructions, Mr. Henderson said calmly, sliding a folder across the table. "The results are conclusive." The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and family drama. Michael and his brothers contested the will, of course, but the evidence was undeniable: the DNA test, the photographs, the letters from my mother. Through it all, I kept working at the hospital. The familiar rhythm of shifts, patients, and medical routines kept me grounded when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. When the legal dust finally settled, I found myself the majority owner of a multi-billion-dollar empire. The weight of it was terrifying, but I knew exactly what to do. Using the inheritance, I established the Eleanor Grace Foundation, providing healthcare, housing, and education for single mothers and their children in underserved communities. I returned to Crestwood and restored my mother's cottage, turning it into a free clinic that bore her name, the Eleanor Wilson Medical Center. On the wall of that clinic hang two photographs, one of my mother, Eleanor, holding me as a baby, her smile radiant with hope and love, and another of my father in his hospital bed during our last conversation, finally at peace. I kept my apartment in Queens and still work shifts at Manhattan General. The residents I treat now have no idea that the nurse checking their blood pressure could buy the hospital if she wanted to. And that's exactly how I like it. When people ask why I chose this simple life over the billionaire lifestyle, why I didn't move into the penthouse or take my seat on the corporate board, I simply smile and say, I already received the only inheritance that mattered, my father's love and my mother's legacy. And somewhere beyond this world, I know an old man finally rests in peace, his last wish fulfilled through the daughter he never stopped loving. If this story reminded you that family isn't always about blood, but about the bonds we choose to honor, I'd love to hear from you. Please comment below with one lesson you've learned about love and forgiveness. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove it's never too late for a second chance. Thank you for watching, and remember, the most meaningful connections often come when we least expect them.